morning, and thank you for coming out this morning to listen to us. It's a great honor to have so many of you here. I have a Dr. Cottingham story, too. When it came to doing my dissertation, my primary goal was to fly through little friction as possible, because I had heard some horror stories. And Dr. Cottingham was such a mellow, laid-back person that I assumed that he wouldn't give me a hard time on anything wrong. I also assumed that I was asked to present today because someone thought I was a role model for what you should do to be successful. It may be that I am a role model for what you should not do to be successful, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, and you decide what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Development of my professional identity as a therapist began very early in life, so I'm going to try to speak quickly. And I didn't know these were experiences that were developing my professional identity at the time. So 16 years old, I arrived at a St. Patrick's Day celebration in the recreational hall of the church towards the end of the festivities. A inebriated woman starts talking to me. I had few social skills, so I just stood there and listened to her for about 15 minutes. And she says to me, "You're a great listener." And so it's time for me to get out of physics. And I decided, 15 years later, 10 years later, 9 years later, it's time for me to get out of physics. And so I think I'm going to be a therapist. All you have to do is listen. Wrong again. 19 years old, small technical undergraduate school. They had a free counseling center. A brochure was passed around saying that if you have any problems relating to the opposite sex, you may want to come and talk about it. Well, since there were 3,000 day students and only 30 female day students, I did have a problem relating to that. I went for therapy and talked my heart out for 1 year, once a week, and learned how to develop an insight into my feelings and emotions. Also learned some other things that came to direct me into therapy. I had a good experience, and I was very much helped by my therapists, plural. And so when it came to choosing a new field of career, I said, they helped me, maybe I could help others. During the process of 3 years of therapy, free therapy at my undergraduate school, I came to a point where I wanted to switch therapists. The scariest thing I ever had to do in my life, because I needed to tell my current therapist. He said, okay. I learned that not to get uptight when patients had problems with where you were going in therapy. My second therapist was a female therapist. I fell in love with her. I had to tell her. And she said, okay. No problem. I didn't go any further than that, but very quickly I learned later on, for use later on in life, that no matter what your patient tells you, it's okay. It doesn't, it's all part of the therapeutic experience. It's okay. I'm 21 years old. I arrived at FSU studying physics. That was my career. I was going to get a PhD. 2 years later, I received a master's degree in physics and decided I do not want to work with things the rest of my life. I want to help people. I look around. Social work, not for me. I thought they just did food stamps. What did I know? What did I know? see the counselor education program in the FSU catalog and say, huh, that sounds like something I want to do. Apply at the last minute. For some reason, I was accepted at the last minute. Began with that class that was experimented on. But it was a good experiment because it was an experiential program. We did not touch a textbook for the first 6 months. We didn't even talk about theory for the first 3 months or so. We learned communication skills, we learned interaction skills, we practiced on each other, some counseling skills. It was a great way to get your feet wet, and it served me well because it taught me to deal with the client as a person and not as a diagnosis. It was a wonderful beginning. I'm forever grateful that I stumbled upon this program at that point. While doing a 6-month master's internship at the Florida State University London Study Program, I decided that I did not want to go to work yet. And so I applied to the PhD program and was accepted. Again, I don't know why, but I was accepted from over there. So I joined the program, and let's see, I'm halfway through the program, doing my practicals, and faculty, unbeknownst to me, is deciding that my counseling skills are not up to par and that maybe I should be asked to lead the program. Fortunately for me, Dr. E. Thomas Dowd came to my rescue, took me under his wing, and became my mentor for the next 6 months in the counseling lab, and taught me enough skill level to be able to stay in the program. And I'm forever thankful to him for doing that. I consider my career a series of fortunate experiences. 1976, I'm 30 years old. I had my freshly minted PhD in hand and no job. So I naively start looking for a job using the APA Monitor newspaper. And I looked at 3 months, send out many, many resumes and cover letters, individual cover letters for each, individually tailored for each resume, for each job. And nothing. Finally, there's an advertisement in the Tallahassee Democrat for a position at Archibald Memorial Hospital in Thomasville doing therapy. I take it, start doing therapy at $13,000 a year, and going to get some experience so that it'll be a little bit easier for me to find a real job a little bit down the road. Fortunately, I had this mental health center was attached to a hospital that had an inpatient unit. So one of my first experiences there was to witness ECT being applied, and this was after, of course, they had the the drug that keeps you from going into the epileptic fix when you see it, but it still wasn't much fun to watch. However, I did have contact with a lot of serious mental illness, and it helped me to become very familiar with serious mental illness, so I was no longer afraid of it. I also was astounded to discover that I was being paid to learn. Because when I had my PhD and I thought I knew nothing, when I got into everything, good me. When I got into the field, I realized I knew very little, practically nothing. And they were paying me to learn. Poor people I was doing therapy on. 2 years later, there was a cutback in funding. A number of people had to be fired. I was not one of them, even though I was an administrator. I was also doing therapy, and I was doing a lot of therapy. Every hour I had another patient, while some of the other administrators felt like they should do administration more than they should do therapy, because it was more fun or more highfalutin or something. And so when it came time to let go of people, the director looked at my track record, looked at how much money I was producing for the mental health center, and they kept me. So, lesson, work hard. Don't be afraid of doing therapy and doing a lot of it if you're working for somebody else. Work hard. Do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. Another good thing that happened to me there was that they sent us to workshops every once in a while. I had a friend in Atlanta, so I went to go visit her, and there was a workshop on hypnosis in Atlanta that felt asked to go to Atlanta. I wasn't, back up. It wasn't that I was motivated to learn hypnosis. I wanted to go visit my friend. And had the trip paid for. They did it. And I learned hypnosis skills. I didn't think much of it because I had a scientific background and it was too, flaky for me. But I wanted to go visit her again the next year. So I went back, and this time it really took. And I developed skills in the use of hypnosis by going to a lot of workshops. This is important later on. (1982). I've been there 5 years now. The 2 years I thought would help me get a job turns into 5 years. I'm looking for 1 whole year of work. Again, can't find anything. After all these applications, I use the Tallahassee Democrat again and find a job as the director of outpatient services in Bradenton, Florida. It was a couple of steps up, maybe 3 or 4 steps up the ladder of my career development, but it was making a lot more money. I was very excited. I go. A year and a half later, because of my poor knowledge of politics and because I also the position was more than I had skill level for, I was asked to write a letter of resignation or fire. At the time, I thought it was the end of my professional life. Because I was at the peak. I was making, I don't know, close to $30,000 a year. More money than I ever imagined myself making. And here I am, fired. In retrospect, well, let me back up. So what am I going to do next? Go find another job as an administration? I had 2 bosses in my life. Neither one of them worked out well. So I'm going to go for a 3rd boss. Administration obviously wasn't for me, so now what I got to do is be a therapist, frontline therapist, get my salary cut in half. It was a tough decision to make. And I said, I have this piece of paper that says I am licensed by the state of Florida to practice psychology. Oh, by the way, when I got my PhD, this department, Human Services, Counseling Human Services, something like that, was not approved by the APA. In order to sit for the exam to get a license, you need to be approved by the department that you graduated from, needs to be approved by the APA. So how did I get my license? Good story, late yours. Back then, every law in Florida was sunsetted after 7 years. It means after 7 years, automatically was taken off the books. For some reason, when the licensing law was taken off the books, there was a little bit of something or another that prevented it from immediately being reenacted. In fact, that was a time when in Miami, so there was no licensing law. So in Miami, somebody had a monkey licensed as a psychologist. So I sending in the proper paperwork to the state. So FPA thought it would be a relatively easy thing for them to do to get the law reinstated. However, what they didn't count on was that there was a middle-aged woman who had the same kind of degree I had, who also could not be licensed, and she started a group of people to start a agitation in Tallahassee to have us able to be licensed also. FPA was not worried because they had a lot of political clout, they had a high-paid lobbyist, no problem for them. Big problem for them, because what they did not understand, or know at the time, is that this woman's husband was very, 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 very big in the citrus industry. So he knew a lot of people in Tallahassee. So it did not matter what kind of arguments FBA made. The new law included a grandfathering clause that those of us who had graduated from accredited programs that were counseling psychological in nature had an opportunity to be grandfathered in as psychologists, licensed psychologists. So FBA was not very happy about that. They never really appreciated me as a member much, but that's how I developed my identity as a psychologist. It was very, very fortunate. So I have this piece of paper. I can work for myself. Let me do it. So I'm going to try for a while. Anyway, I had very few expenses, and I had a work ethic, and I made a go of it. That's how I became a role model. I mean, it's just, my career did not follow any textbook. So what have I learned? Number of things. I have learned that if you want to be successful in any career, you have to be persistent. You don't have to know where you're going necessarily, although I guess that's nice, it helps. But you do have to be persistent, and you have to be willing to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. You have to be willing to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. It's not rocket science, but a lot of people aren't willing to do what they don't want to do. So what I mean by that, when I was first starting my practice, I would travel round trip 1 hour for 1 hour of therapy. I wasn't too proud to do that. I joined every insurance company panel of providers that I could get on, even the ones that were paying only $40 an hour, when the going rate might have been $80 an hour. I wasn't too proud to do that. I invested myself I did things I didn't want to do. I like to write letters to the newspaper expressing my far out views. I didn't do that because now I had, instead of one boss, I had 150 bosses a year, and I didn't want to ruin my chance of getting another patient, so I kept my mouth shut. I affiliated with as many hospitals as I could back then, because back then we were being paid nicely to do therapy in hospitals as an outside consultant. I taught classes, which I did enjoy teaching, but I taught classes, why? Because out of every class I taught, I got 1 or 2 patients. And back then, that helped me. And then, of course, they told somebody else, so I got some more patients. I networked with psychiatrists. Not that I was in love with any of them, but but they got to know me, I got to know them, and I got a few referrals that way. I visited the offices of primary care physicians, and I left little jars of candy with the secretary with my business card on it. Candy because they would be eaten, and I would have to go back and fill it up again and get my face in front of the people. I went and visited with the nurses because they were the ones that were primarily responsible for making the referrals. And the goodwill that develops from those kinds of visits only lasts about 2 or 3 weeks. So I had to keep going. Did I want to do that? Heck no. In fact, when my practice developed, that was the first thing I dropped. I made home visits. I wasted time. I invested time driving. That really was a slip of the tongue. But it wasn't wasted time. It helped me build my practice. I'd invest driving time, and I would go to somebody's house and deal with whatever was in the house, and do therapy of some sort for an hour until I didn't have to do that anymore. Part of Florida I grew up in, part of Florida I live in, is full of ancient people. People as old as me now, even older. And so when I was starting my practice, I went to as many clubhouses of these trailer parks as I could and gave talks. Technical, academic talks? Heck no. I gave talks on how to age gracefully. I gave talks on happiness training. I gave talks on dealing with grandchildren who were in the other part of the country. I gave talks on what they wanted to hear about, not what was important to me. DUI, I did DUI counseling. I hated doing DUI counseling because I didn't enjoy working with people who didn't want to be there. But I did it because it paid. And in the beginning, I had to do that. And I went after third-party endorsements. Tried to promote myself to people who would then promote me to other people. And finally, I joined civic organizations. Because when you join a civic organization, people get to know you, and you get 1 or 2 referrals. So I didn't go for the big things or the big bucks. I started small. 30 years later, I don't have to do those things. But in the beginning, I was willing to do what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to do it. Also learn to not get into trouble in your personal life. You get into trouble, it's true, you get into trouble in your personal life, and it's a real handicap in your business, professional life. Don't do it. Don't get into trouble in your professional life, because it makes a mess of the rest of your life, because it consumes a lot of time and energy to get out of trouble. So don't do anything that's not ethical. Don't do anything that doesn't seem ethical. Even if it is ethical, if it doesn't appear ethical, don't do it. Get licensed. Can't do anything in private practice if you're not licensed. Keep good records. That keeps you out of trouble. Develop a support system. I have been part of the men's support group for 25 years now, and it has gotten me through a number of thin times in my life. Having a support system that you can share your heart and soul with is very, very important for long-term professional growth. Don't violate laws, obviously. Although some people do it. You're always reading every year, APA, just got it with my application to APA, reapplication of the list of people who have been kicked out of the organization because of violation of some law. It happens all the time. By the way, I am now a lifetime member of APA, and I no longer That's it. I did it. One step at a time, not realizing I was doing it. I had a strong work ethic that stood me in good stead. One moral from my story is, do not have to do everything according to the career development textbook in order to be successful. God bless you if you are, but if you're one of those people who it doesn't fit into the model, don't give up, keep going. Now, I'm a prime example of being successful without fitting into that role model. Number 2, if something disastrous happens to you in your professional life, don't give up, because maybe years later you will discover it was the best thing that ever happened to you. I never would have had the courage to quit a high-paying job in order to go into private practice unless if I hadn't been kicked in the butt and forced to do that. So do not despair. And I've had a lot of disasters. Almost got kicked out of a bunch of places. Thank you.
But